So we're live. um, so the Alter Rebbe has defined that there are different types of tzaddik, there are different types of Rasha, and there's the middle person. Um, the Alter Rebbe goes on to say that the Zohar explains in the part called Raya Mehemna that a tzaddik who has it bad, what does that mean? Um, we said, the Talmud said it means an incomplete tzaddik. What does the Zohar say about it? It means that the bad that's in him is subservient to the good. So he has a little bit bad, but the bad is under control. And that's the meaning of a tzaddik, who the bad is to him. Meaning, the bad is to him, meaning he's got it under control. That's how the Raya Mehemna, which is a part of the Zohar, explains it. The Alter Rebbe then quotes from the Talmud in Tractate Brachot that the Talmud there discusses a tzaddik and Rasha. The Talmud says there that for the righteous, their good inclination judges them, meaning is the one in control. Wicked people, their evil inclination is in control. The intermediate, the Beinoni, is controlled or is judged by both. He has both judges, the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, the good inclination and the evil inclination, both judge. So the Talmud there continues and says a story that Rabbah said to his students, if I am, somebody like me is a Beinoni. Somebody like me is the middle kind of guy. Rabbah was the greatest sage of his generation. He's saying, I am, a Beinoni is somebody like me. So his student, Abaye, says, you're not leaving life for anyone. You're killing us. Why are you killing us? Because those who are wicked are called dead. And if you are a Beinoni, you're the middle one, we're all definitely lower than your level. So we're all wicked then. So, you're setting the bar too high. If you're calling yourself a Beinoni, that means the rest of us are definitely below that. And, so that's the story in the Talmud. So we have to understand the story. Like, what's going on? What is Rabbah thinking when he says somebody like me is a Beinoni? Right? We have to understand the story. What's Abaye thinking? What's Rabbah thinking? Another kind of quote from the Talmud that we need to understand. The Talmud says in Baba Basra that Job, says to God, Master of the world, you've created righteous people and you've created wicked. That's what he says to God. That's what Job says to God, and that's what the Talmud says that Job says to God. The Alter Rebbe asks, what do you mean? He says to God, you created righteous and wicked. We know the Talmud teaches us that although everything is predetermined, whether you'll be strong or weak, rich or poor, the one thing that is not predetermined is whether you'll be righteous or wicked. That's the freedom is given for everyone to choose to be righteous or not. So what does he mean when he says that it's predetermined that you'll be righteous or wicked? What's Job saying to God? You've created righteous people, you created wicked. Is that true? We know that that's not predetermined. So we got to understand that. Another factor, another thing that we need to understand. We also need to understand, what is this level called Beinoni? We know for sure that a Beinoni is not somebody who does the right thing half of the time and does the wrong thing half of the time. It's right in the middle as far as his actions. Well, the biggest proof to that is Rabbah would never mistake himself for a Beinoni if a Beinoni means that half the time you're sinning. Why would Rabbah never make that mistake? Because it's known that Rabbah was such a great person, such a holy person, to the extent that he never allowed himself to be wasting even a moment of Torah study, to the extent that when it was time for him to die, the angel of death could not find a good time to take him, because he was always saying words of Torah. You can't interrupt Torah study to take him. So he was busy studying Torah. He was walking from one thing to another thing. His mouth was always moving. He was always speaking words of Torah. That tells us that Rabbah was somebody who never wasted, never wasted a minute. So it's not the kind of guy like, oh, half the time I'm kind of sinning and half the time I'm doing mitzvahs. He didn't even waste a second, to the extent that the angel of death couldn't even find a time to take him. That's the kind of person he was. So how did Rabbah conclude that he is a Beinoni? Obviously, a Beinoni cannot be somebody who half the time is messing up. Another problem with that kind of definition of saying that a Beinoni is somebody who half the time is doing good and half the time is doing bad is that while somebody is doing something wrong, while somebody is sinning, at that moment, the person is considered completely wicked. At the moment that they're committing the sin. Now, if after that moment passes, they do teshuvah, they repent, then they're called righteous again. So where is this in-between time? At the moment of the sinning, well, at that moment, the person is considered wicked. If they've repented, then they're righteous. So where is this middle time? And even a minor sin, even a sin which is just violating something of rabbinic decree, if one is violating something of rabbinic nature, is also called wicked. As the Talmud says in Tractate Yevamot and in Nida, that violating even a rabbinic prohibition, if a person violates a rabbinic prohibition, at that time they're considered wicked. So you can't say, well, he doesn't violate biblical prohibitions, he just violates rabbinic prohibitions. That doesn't work. Furthermore, even if one violates something as minor as not criticizing or condemning somebody else who's sinning, meaning if you have the opportunity, you have the ability to stop somebody else from committing a sin, and you choose to sit back and say nothing, then that's a person who doesn't step up is also considered wicked. So you can't even fit in the Beinoni over there. If you do something, even if you're doing everything perfect, but you have the opportunity to help somebody else and get them on the right track, and you're kind of not taking care of that, even that would render the person who's kind of holding back at that moment considered wicked. Of course, they do teshuvah, and they're righteous. So where is this Beinoni here? There's no sin too small. They say, yeah, you just commit those kind of sins, then you're the middle guy. Anything. So if even stopping somebody else is considered, if you refrain from stopping somebody else, that's considered wicked. Even more so, if somebody holds back from doing a mitzvah that they're supposed to do, says, I'm supposed to do a mitzvah, and I'm neglecting to do it. Even a mitzvah like Torah study, which is a mitzvah that applies any free moment, If you have an opportunity to study Torah and you say, you know what, I'll just waste the time instead, that is also kind of at the moment that a person is choosing to neglect a positive mitzvah, at that moment, that person is also considered wicked. So if that's the case, then a Beinani cannot even be somebody who misses a minute that they could be studying Torah. Now that means that 24 hours a day, the person is busy doing mitzvahs. They don't waste even a minute. A Beinani must be somebody who doesn't even spend 1 minute wasted. Doesn't even waste a little bit of time. He's studying Torah every free moment. So now it makes sense why Rabbah said somebody like me is a Beinani. We said that Rabbah wouldn't even waste a moment. Okay, well, if you waste a moment, then you're falling into the category of Russia. So Rabbah says I'm a Beinani, even though we know that he didn't even waste a minute, because wasting a minute would mean, that one would fall into the category of Russia. The Alter Rebbe then continues to say, well, if that's the case, that a Beinani is this really high level, somebody who doesn't even sin even a little bit. Okay, so we understand how Rabbah said about himself that he's a Beinani. So a tzaddik must be more than that. We've defined a Russia as being somewhere in the range of sinning sometimes or sinning a lot. There's that range. But the Alter Rebbe addresses a question. He says, usually, when people talk about a tzaddik in a Russia, they say if you do more positive, then you're a tzaddik. If you do more negative, then you're a Russia. Isn't it? It's kind of like a scale. You have more on the good side, then you're righteous. More on the on the bad side, then that's wicked. So the Alter Rebbe says, when we talk about a tzaddik in a Russia in that sense, that's only a borrowed term. When we say tzaddik there, we mean righteous as in you come out of court in the judgment day, Rosh Hashanah, with the verdict that, well, you're more righteous than wicked. So there, it's kind of a scale. And if you got 50-50, then you're in the middle. If you got 51% good, well, you're more good. You kind of come out righteous. If you got 51% in the negative, then you're more wicked. But that's not the true definition of a tzaddik in a Russia. That's a borrowed definition. So we call a tzaddik in Russia like somebody who leaves the court and they had a innocent verdict. Doesn't mean that they're a perfect person, that they're completely righteous. They came out righteous in the judgment. They're in this kind of judgment, they're righteous, but not that they are righteous overall. Just they kind of, in judgment, they came out okay. So in judgment, it works by what's the majority, how, in the judgment of Rosh Hashanah. But the true definition of a tzaddik in a Russia and a Beinani, the Alter Rebbe says, or sages say, that tzaddikim are judged only by their good inclination. As it says concerning David HaMelech, King David, after he did teshuvah, he says, my heart is hollow within me. And our sages explain that King David was saying, I no longer have a Yetzer Hara, evil inclination. He killed off his evil inclination in fasting, but he no longer had any evil inclination. So if you didn't reach that level, even if you have more on the merit side than the negative side, then you're not at all at the level of the true definition of a tzaddik. And that's why our sages say concerning tzaddikim that the Medrash says that God saw that there were only going to be a few tzaddikim, so he spread them out and planted a few in each generation. He kind of planted one per generation or a few in each generation, spread them out so that we should have kind of a good distribution of tzaddikim throughout the generations. And obviously, if we're talking about a definition of just more, 51%, well, there isn't a shortage of people that are at least 51% of the time doing okay. We're talking about that there's a very limited quantity of these tzaddikim and you have to spread them out. We're talking about a different kind of tzaddik. One who's killed off the evil inclination. Like the verse says, my heart is hollow, meaning I have no evil inclination left. I'm just the good inclination. And like the verse says about a tzaddik, that the tzaddik is the foundation of the world, meaning there are a few of them. And the tzaddik is one that holds up the world, and that's what keeps the world going. They're the foundation, indicating that this is they needed to be spread out to keep the world going, because we need a tzaddik in every generation, and there can be like in the generation of Noach, right? He was the one tzaddik that kept humanity going. It was almost complete. Humanity was almost completely destroyed, and that one tzaddik that kept it going. And in later generations, of course, they have those few of these tzaddikim. So what we have so far, and this I would say up until this point, and this is the kind of the middle of the chapter 1, lays out that we have to come up with a real understanding of what is it that we're expected to be. We started off with the first quote, which said we're supposed to try to be a tzaddik. Now, don't be a Rasha. What is a tzaddik? What are we striving for? Why does it add don't be a Rasha? What should we not be? What is this? There are different kinds of tzaddik, different kinds of Rasha, different levels within the range of tzaddik and Rasha. And then there's the Beinani. And this book is called the Book of the Beinani. So what is the Beinani? So with all of this intro, we've kind of taken out the old definition and shown that our kind of original thinking about what's considered righteous and wicked, we have to rethink that and re-examine that. And we need to really explore, what is God expecting of us? What are we capable of? And as the Alter Rebbe will now lay out, going forward, what the struggle is that we have inside, and what the real definition of a tzaddik is, what the real definition of a Rasha is, and who is this Beinani person exactly. And that will go over the next 12 chapters, where the Alter Rebbe will lay out what's going on with this godly inclination, or this evil inclination and good inclination. What's this fight about? Who is really wicked? Who is really righteous? And what is this main Beinani character that we're striving to be? How does, what does that look like? And that's something that I'll explain in detail. And that really kind of takes off from this point. So this is all kind of just laying out a whole bunch of questions to establish that we have to redefine tzaddik, Rasha, and Beinani, and we want to kind of explore what is it that we are striving to be. And with that, we'll conclude the live video. If you have any questions about what was discussed in this video, please do post your questions as comments on this video, and feel free to share it with anybody you see fit. And that will conclude the video for now.